The dust-coated stagecoach wheels ground to a halt as Zara Vaughn realized with growing horror that the 5 masked riders surrounding them were not the escort party her fiancé had promised would meet them at Coyote Pass. Her heart hammered against her corset as the barrel of a Colt revolver pressed against the driver's temple, and the leader of the bandits barked orders in the blistering Arizona heat of 1878. "Everyone out. Hands where I can see 'em." The bandit's voice was rough as sandpaper, his eyes cold slits behind his bandana mask. Zara stepped down from the coach, her wedding dress trailing in the desert dust. She had been traveling to meet Frederick Hollingsworth, her arranged match, a wealthy cattle baron 30 years her senior whom she had never met. The journey from Boston had been grueling, but her father's debts had left her no choice but to accept this marriage of convenience. The driver, an elderly man named Jenkins, raised his weathered hands. "We ain't carrying no strongbox today, just passengers." "Shut your mouth," growled the bandit leader whom the others called Rattler. His eyes narrowed as they fell on Zara's trunk. "What's this? Wedding finery." He hooked a finger through the delicate lace of her veil, which had been carefully packed on top. "Boys, looks like we found ourselves a bride." The other passengers, a traveling salesman and an elderly couple, huddled together as the bandits ransacked their belongings. Zara stood tall despite her fear, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing her tremble. "This one's pretty," said one bandit, circling Zara like a vulture. "Hollingsworth won't miss what he's never had." Rattler laughed, a sound that sent chills down Zara's spine. "The old man paid good money for this fancy Eastern bride. I reckon he'd pay even more to get her back." "Please," Zara said, her voice steadier than she felt. "My father cannot afford any ransom. Mr. Hollingsworth barely knows me." "Then you're worthless to us," Rattler sneered, grabbing her arm roughly. "Except maybe as entertainment." Jenkins stepped forward. "Now see here," the butt of a pistol connected with the old man's temple and he crumpled to the ground. The elderly woman screamed as the bandits forced the remaining passengers back into the coach. "Drive on," Rattler ordered the salesman, who had been instructed to take the reins. "Tell Hollingsworth if he wants his bride, he'll bring $5,000 to Dead Man's Gulch by sundown tomorrow." Alone. As the stagecoach rumbled away, Zara found herself alone with the 5 bandits in the merciless desert heat, miles from the nearest town. They bound her hands and led her to a small canyon where they had made camp. "What if he doesn't pay?" asked the youngest bandit, barely older than Zara's 20 years. "Then we sell her to the houses in Mexico," Rattler replied, not bothering to lower his voice. "Either way we profit." Zara felt a wave of despair wash over her. She had left everything behind in Boston, her friends, her home, her dreams of becoming a teacher, all to save her family from ruin. Now she might never see them again. As the sun began to set, painting the desert in hues of gold and crimson, the bandits drank whiskey around a small fire. Zara sat with her back against a boulder, her wrists raw from the rope bindings. Her thoughts turned to escape, but where would she go? The desert at night was as dangerous as these men, filled with rattlesnakes, scorpions, and the very real possibility of dying from exposure. The sound of a horse approaching made the bandits reach for their weapons. A lone rider appeared at the edge of their camp, silhouetted against the setting sun. He was tall and broad-shouldered, his face partially obscured by the shadow of his hat. "Evening, gentlemen," he called out, his voice deep and confident. "Seems like you've got something that doesn't belong to you." Rattler stood, hand hovering over his holster. "This ain't your business, stranger. Ride on." The rider dismounted smoothly, leading his horse forward. Zara could see him clearly now, a man in his late 20s with sun-bronzed skin and keen blue eyes that missed nothing. He wore the practical clothes of a working cowboy, not the flashy attire of a gunslinger, but the worn handle of his revolver spoke of familiarity. "I'm afraid I can't do that," the stranger said, his gaze finding Zara's. Something in his eyes made her breath catch. "I've been tracking this stagecoach for 2 days now." You Hollingsworth's man, Rattler asked suspiciously. He's sending scouts ahead of payment. The stranger smiled, but there was no warmth in it. No, sir, I'm not working for Hollingsworth. In a flash, his hand moved to his holster. The first shot caught Rattler in the shoulder, spinning him around before he could draw. The second bandit managed to fire, but his bullet went wide as the stranger dove behind a rock, returning fire with deadly accuracy. Zara pressed herself against the boulder as bullets ricocheted around her. The young bandit grabbed her, using her as a shield as he backed toward the horses. "Drop your gun or she dies," he shouted, pressing his revolver to her temple. The stranger had already dispatched 2 of the bandits. Another lay wounded, and Rattler was on his knees, clutching his bleeding shoulder. The camp had fallen eerily silent except for the ringing in Zara's ears from the gunfire. "Let her go, boy," the stranger said quietly. "You're not a killer yet. Don't become one today. Stay back." The young bandit's hand trembled against Zara's head. "What's your name, son?" The stranger lowered his gun slightly, his movements deliberate. The question seemed to confuse the young bandit. "What? Your name? Your mama didn't raise you to die in a desert holding an innocent woman hostage." The young man's voice cracked. Tommy Miller." "Well, Tommy Miller, I'm giving you a chance most don't get. Put down the gun and ride out of here. I won't follow." Zara felt the pressure of the gun barrel ease slightly. The young bandit was considering it. "He's lying, Tommy," Rattler shouted. "Shoot her." In that moment of distraction, the stranger fired. The bullet grazed Tommy's arm, causing him to release both Zara and his weapon. She stumbled forward as the stranger rushed to her, pulling her behind him protectively. Tommy clutched his bleeding arm, terror in his young face. The stranger nodded toward the horses. "Go on, boy, find better company." Without looking back, Tommy scrambled onto a horse and galloped away. Rattler lunged for his fallen gun, but the stranger was faster, kicking it away. "It's over," he told the bandit leader. "Your men are dead or gone." Rattler spat in the dirt. "Who the hell are you?" The stranger's eyes never left Rattler as he answered. "Name's Brock Yates. I was tracking you after you robbed the Silver Creek mine payroll last month." "You're no lawman," Rattler growled. "Never claimed to be," Brock replied. He quickly bound Rattler and the wounded bandit with their own ropes before turning to Zara. "Are you hurt, madam?" Zara shook her head, still trying to process what had happened. "No, I thank you, Mr. Yates." As Brock gently cut the ropes from her wrists, she noticed the careful way he handled the knife, making sure not to touch her skin. His calloused fingers betrayed a life of hard work, but there was a gentleness to his movements that belied his deadly efficiency moments before. "What happens now?" she asked, rubbing her chafed wrists. Brock glanced at the setting sun. "Too late to travel tonight. We'll make camp here and head to Willow Springs in the morning. The sheriff there can handle these 2. And me. I was supposed to meet my fiancé, Hollingsworth," Brock finished, his expression unreadable. "I know of him." Something in his tone made Zara curious. "You don't approve of him?" Brock busied himself gathering supplies from the bandits' camp. "Not my place to approve or disapprove, miss." "Vaughn, Zara Vaughn," he nodded. "Miss Vaughn, I'll see you safely to Willow Springs. From there, you can decide your own path." As Brock prepared a simple meal of beans and hardtack, Zara found herself studying him. Unlike the bandits, who had leered at her constantly, Brock maintained a respectful distance. He moved with the easy confidence of a man comfortable in the wilderness, but there was an alertness to him, as if he was always ready for danger. "You said you were tracking these men," Zara said as they ate. "Are you a bounty hunter?" Brock took a sip from his canteen before answering. "Sometimes. I used to work as a ranch foreman up in Wyoming. These days I take jobs as they come, cattle drives, hunting bounties, guiding settlers." "And you just happened to be tracking these particular bandits when they took me?" A hint of a smile touched his lips. "Nothing happens by chance in the desert, Miss Vaughn. Every creature leaves tracks." Later, as Zara lay wrapped in a blanket Brock had given her, she watched him sit by the fire, keeping watch. The wounded bandit had passed out from pain and Rattler lay glaring at them, securely bound and gagged. Despite her ordeal, Zara felt oddly safe in the presence of this mysterious man who had appeared from nowhere to save her. "Mr. Yates," she said softly. "Why did you say that to the young bandit, about his mother not raising him to die in the desert?" Brock's face was half illuminated by the firelight as he looked at her. "Because it's true, most men who end up bad started somewhere good. Sometimes they just need reminding." "Is that why you let him go?" He poked at the fire with a stick. "He was just a kid running with the wrong crowd. Killing him wouldn't have served justice." "You're not what I expected from a bounty hunter," Zara admitted. "And you're not what I expected from a mail-order bride," he countered, surprising her with his directness. Zara sat up, drawing the blanket around her shoulders. "I'm not a mail-order bride. It's an arranged marriage. My father owed debts and Mr. Hollingsworth offered a solution. A man 30 years your senior buying a young woman to warm his bed and grace his dining table." Brock's voice had an edge to it. "Forgive me, Miss Vaughn, but where I come from we call things what they are." His words stung, partly because of their bluntness but mostly because of their truth. "I had no choice," she said quietly. Brock's expression softened. "There's always a choice, Miss Vaughn. Even if it's just choosing how to face what's in front of you." They fell silent after that, but Zara found herself unable to sleep, her mind too full of the day's events and the uncertain future ahead. What would happen when they reached Willow Springs? Would Hollingsworth still want her after this scandal? Did she even want to marry him anymore? Morning came with the harsh brilliance of a desert sunrise. Brock had already prepared coffee over a small fire when Zara awoke. He handed her a tin cup without meeting her eyes, as if their conversation the night before had crossed some invisible boundary. They ate a quick breakfast before Brock loaded the prisoners onto their horses. Rattler was secured to his saddle, his hands bound behind his back. The wounded bandit, barely conscious, was similarly restrained. "It's about 4 hours to Willow Springs," Brock told her as he helped her mount one of the bandits' horses. "Stay close to me. This territory can be dangerous." As they rode, Zara found herself studying the landscape with new eyes. The desert, which had seemed so barren and hostile yesterday, revealed its subtle beauty in the morning light, the delicate patterns of wildflowers, the graceful flight of hawks overhead, the ever-changing colors of the distant mountains. "It's beautiful in its way," she said, breaking the silence between them. Brock glanced at her, surprised. "Most Easterners only see the harshness." "I'm learning to look deeper," she replied, meeting his gaze. Something changed in his expression then, a softening around the eyes. "Good skill to have out here." They rode in companionable silence for a while, the only sounds the steady rhythm of hooves and the occasional call of a desert bird. Zara found herself wondering about this man who had saved her life. There was a story behind his watchful eyes, she was certain of it. "Have you always lived in the West, Mr. Yates?" she asked as they navigated a narrow pass between towering rock formations. Brock adjusted his hat against the sun. "Born in Missouri, came west with my father after the war. He was looking for a fresh start. And did he find it?" A shadow crossed Brock's face. "For a while. He died in a mining accident when I was 16, been on my own since then." "I'm sorry," Zara said softly. Brock shrugged, but she could see the old pain beneath his casual gesture. "Life out here is often short, makes what time we have more precious." Around midday, they stopped by a small spring to water the horses. As Brock checked the bindings on their prisoners, Rattler began laughing, a low, menacing chuckle that made Zara's skin crawl. "Something amusing you, Rattler?" Brock asked, his hand resting on his holster. "Just thinking about how Hollingsworth is going to take the news that his pristine bride spent 2 nights alone in the desert with another man," Rattler sneered. "He's particular about his possessions." Brock's expression darkened. "Miss Vaughn isn't a possession." "Tell that to him," Rattler replied. "Ask him what happened to his last wife, or the housekeeper who caught his eye." Before Brock could respond, the distant sound of gunfire reached them. He immediately pushed Zara behind a large boulder, drawing his weapon. "Stay down," he ordered, scanning the horizon. 6 riders appeared on the ridge above them, their rifles raised. Zara's heart sank as she recognized the lead rider, a tall man with silver hair and an expensive suit that looked out of place in the rugged landscape. "That's Frederick Hollingsworth," she whispered to Brock. Hollingsworth's cold gaze swept over the scene before him, the bound bandits, Brock with his gun drawn and Zara partially hidden behind the boulder. His expression revealed nothing as he signaled his men to surround them. "Miss Vaughn," he called out, his voice carrying across the distance. "I see you've had quite the adventure. Step away from that man, if you please." Zara hesitated, looking at Brock. His face was carefully neutral, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. "Mr. Hollingsworth," she replied, stepping into view but not moving toward him. "This man saved my life. The bandits were going to ransom me to you." Hollingsworth dismounted with the stiff movements of a man unused to long rides. Up close, Zara could see the lines of cruelty around his mouth that his photograph had not revealed. "And I would have paid it, my dear. You are, after all, my intended bride." His eyes flicked to Brock. "Though I wonder about your condition after spending the night with this gentleman." Brock stepped forward, his hand still on his holster. "Miss Vaughn's honor is intact, Hollingsworth. More than can be said for yours, if the stories are true." Hollingsworth's men raised their rifles, but he waved them down with a smirk. Bold words from a man surrounded by my gunmen. He turned to Zara. "Come, my dear, our wedding awaits in Willow Springs. The preacher is already prepared." Zara felt trapped between 2 forces, the man she had agreed to marry and the man who had saved her life. She looked at Brock, whose blue eyes held a question he wouldn't voice. "These men are wanted criminals," Brock said, nodding toward the bandits. "I'm taking them to the sheriff in Willow Springs." "My men can handle that," Hollingsworth replied dismissively. "You've done your good deed, Cowboy, now move along." One of Hollingsworth's men dismounted and approached Rattler, cutting his bonds. Zara gasped as Rattler rubbed his wrists, exchanging a knowing look with Hollingsworth. "What is this?" she demanded. "That man kidnapped me?" Hollingsworth's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Business, my dear. Rattler occasionally provides services for my enterprises. His assignment was merely to ensure you arrived safely to me." "By kidnapping me?" Zara was incredulous. "By protecting you from unscrupulous characters who might take advantage of a young woman traveling alone." Hollingsworth's gaze shifted meaningfully to Brock. Brock's hand tightened on his gun. "You arranged the kidnapping. There was never any ransom demand. Insurance in case Miss Vaughn had second thoughts about our arrangement," Hollingsworth admitted without shame. "Which appears prudent, given how quickly she seems to have formed an attachment to you." Zara felt sick as the truth became clear. The kidnapping had been a test of her loyalty, her obedience. She had been a pawn in Hollingsworth's game from the beginning. "I won't marry you," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Not now, not ever." Hollingsworth's expression hardened. "I paid good money to your father for you, Miss Vaughn. Our contract is binding." "She's not a commodity to be bought and sold," Brock said, stepping beside Zara. "The lady has made her choice." "The lady has no choice," Hollingsworth snapped. "Her father has gambling debts that would see him in prison. Only my generosity keeps him free." Zara felt the weight of her family's future pressing down on her. Her father's weakness had trapped her, just as it had trapped her mother before her early death. Was she doomed to the same fate? "There's always a choice," she said, echoing Brock's words from the night before. "And I choose freedom." Hollingsworth's face contorted with rage. "Seize her," he ordered his men, "and kill this interfering cowboy." Everything happened at once. Brock drew and fired in one fluid motion, hitting the nearest gunman in the shoulder. Zara ducked as bullets whistled overhead, scrambling behind the boulder for cover. Rattler grabbed a fallen rifle, aiming not at Brock but at Hollingsworth. "You double-crossing snake," Rattler shouted. "You promised me a cut of her dowry." Hollingsworth's eyes widened in surprise just before Rattler's bullet caught him in the chest. He staggered backward, clutching at the spreading red stain on his expensive suit. In the chaos that followed, Brock fought with a controlled precision that left 2 more of Hollingsworth's men wounded. The remaining gunmen, seeing their employer fall, lost their nerve and fled, leaving Rattler to face Brock alone. Rattler swung his rifle toward Zara. "Drop your gun, Yates, or she dies." Before he could finish his threat, Brock fired. The shot echoed across the desert as Rattler fell, his rifle discharging harmlessly into the air. In the sudden silence that followed, Zara could hear her own ragged breathing. Hollingsworth lay motionless on the ground, his blank eyes staring at the cloudless sky. The wounded bandit was unconscious again, having slumped over in his saddle during the gunfight. Brock quickly checked the fallen men, ensuring none posed a further threat before returning to Zara's side. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his eyes scanning her for injuries. "No," she replied, her voice steadier than she expected. "What happens now?" Brock looked at the carnage around them. "We still need to get to Willow Springs. The sheriff will want statements about what happened here." As they gathered the reins of the horses and prepared to leave, Zara glanced at Hollingsworth's body. "He was going to force me to marry him, wasn't he? Even after we reached town." Brock nodded grimly. "Men like Hollingsworth don't take no for an answer. His reputation in these parts is unsavory." "Yet my father would have sent me to him," Zara said bitterly. "Some men only see the dollar signs, not the devil behind them," Brock replied. He hesitated, then added, "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. No woman should be traded like cattle." They rode toward Willow Springs with the wounded bandit and Hollingsworth's body tied across spare horses. The journey was largely silent, both of them processing the violence they had witnessed and the unexpected turn of events. As the small frontier town came into view, Zara broke the silence. "What will you do after you deliver these men to the sheriff?" Brock glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "There's a bounty on Rattler I need to collect. After that, I was planning to head north. Heard there's work on a ranch near Montana territory." Zara nodded, trying to hide her disappointment. Of course he would move on. Men like Brock Yates didn't settle down, especially not with women they'd just met. "And you?" he asked. "Will you return to Boston?" The question hung between them as Zara considered her options. Return to Boston in disgrace, unmarried and with her father's debts still unpaid. Or forge a new path in this harsh but honest land, I don't know, she admitted. "I have some education. Perhaps I could find work as a teacher." Brock's expression softened. "Willow Springs has been looking for a schoolteacher. Their last one left to get married 6 months ago." A flicker of hope kindled in Zara's chest. "Do you think they would hire me, an Easterner with no experience out west?" "Anyone who can face down bandits and stand up to a man like Hollingsworth has the strength for frontier life," Brock said with a small smile. "Besides, they're desperate. The children are running wild." As they rode into town, curious onlookers gathered to watch the strange procession: a cowboy, a woman in a travel-worn dress, and several bodies draped over horses. The sheriff, a grizzled man with a magnificent mustache, hurried out to meet them. "Yates, what in tarnation happened?" he demanded, eyeing the grim cargo. "Long story, Sheriff Taylor," Brock replied, dismounting. "This is Rattler Jackson dead. His wounded partner needs a doctor, and that's Frederick Hollingsworth." The sheriff's eyebrows shot up. "Hollingsworth? Half the territory will be celebrating tonight." He turned to Zara. "And who might you be, miss?" Before she could answer, Brock stepped forward. "This is Miss Zara Vaughn. She was kidnapped by Rattler's gang and then rescued. Hollingsworth was involved in the scheme." "I'll need statements from both of you," the sheriff said, signaling his deputies to take the bodies. "Come to my office once you've had a chance to clean up and rest." As the curious townsfolk dispersed, a matronly woman approached Zara. "You poor dear, you must be exhausted." "I'm Martha Wilson. I run the boarding house. Come with me, a hot bath and clean clothes will set you right." Zara glanced at Brock, reluctant to be separated from him after everything they'd been through. "Go on," he said gently. I'll find you after I've spoken with the sheriff." Hours later, bathed and dressed in borrowed clothes, Zara sat in Sheriff Taylor's office recounting the events of the past 2 days. The sheriff listened intently, occasionally asking questions about details or clarifications. "So Hollingsworth arranged your kidnapping to test your loyalty," he summarized when she finished. "Can't say I'm surprised. The man had a reputation for controlling his women." "I was never his woman," Zara said firmly. The sheriff nodded approvingly. "Good for you, Miss Vaughn." Too many folks around here were afraid to stand up to him. His death might be the best thing that's happened to this territory in years. After giving her statement, Zara stepped outside to find Brock waiting for her. The setting sun cast long shadows down the town's dusty Main Street, painting the wooden buildings in gold and amber. "Sheriff Taylor says you're cleared of any wrongdoing," Brock told her. "Self-defense, plain and simple." "What about you?" Zara asked. "Same. Plus a reward for bringing in Rattler dead or alive." He patted his vest pocket where a small pouch jingled. "It's not much, but it's honest money." They walked together down the boardwalk, neither seeming eager to part ways. The events they had shared had forged a connection between them that was difficult to define but impossible to ignore. "I spoke with the mayor's wife," Brock said, breaking the comfortable silence. "She's on the school board. They're interested in meeting you tomorrow about the teaching position." Zara stopped, turning to face him. "You did that for me," Brock shrugged, a hint of color touching his tan cheeks. "Seemed like the right thing to do." "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." As they stood there, the distance between them felt charged with unspoken possibilities. Brock cleared his throat. "I should let you get some rest. It's been a long day." "When will you leave for Montana?" Zara asked. Unable to keep the question inside any longer, Brock hesitated, studying her face as if searching for something. "I was thinking I might stay around Willow Springs for a while. Town could use a man who knows horses. Maybe start a small ranch outside town if I find the right land." Hope bloomed in Zara's chest. "That sounds like a good plan." "It's just an idea," he said, suddenly self-conscious. "Nothing certain yet." "The best plans rarely are," she replied with a small smile. They reached the boarding house where Martha Wilson had prepared a room for Zara. Standing on the porch steps, Zara found herself reluctant to say goodnight. "Mr. Yates Brock," she began, gathering her courage. "When those bandits took me, I thought my life was over. Now I feel like it's just beginning." Brock's blue eyes softened as they met hers. "Life has a way of taking unexpected turns, sometimes for the better. Would you?" Zara hesitated, then pressed on. "Would you escort me to church on Sunday? I'd like to thank God properly for sending you when he did." A slow smile spread across Brock's face, transforming his serious features. "I'd be honored, Miss Vaughn." "Zara," she corrected him gently. "After everything we've been through, I think we can use our given names." "Zara," he repeated, the name sounding different in his deep voice. "I'll see you Sunday then." As he tipped his hat and turned to leave, Zara called after him. "Brock, what made you say it?" "When you fought off the bandits, someone told me you claimed I was your bride." Brock paused, looking back at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Sometimes words come out before you know you're thinking them," he said simply. "Good night, Zara." "Good night, Brock," she replied, watching him walk away down the darkening street. Standing on the porch of the boarding house, Zara felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. The future was uncertain. No fortune awaited her, no grand house or easy life. But for the first time, the path ahead was her own choosing. And perhaps, just perhaps, she wouldn't walk it alone. 1 year later, Zara stood before her students in the newly expanded Willow Springs schoolhouse, watching as they carefully practiced their penmanship. The town had grown considerably in the months since Hollingsworth's death, as people no longer feared his influence over local businesses and politics. The school bell rang, signaling the end of the day. As the children gathered their slates and books, filing out with cheerful goodbyes, Zara caught sight of a familiar figure leaning against the doorframe. Brock Yates watched her with undisguised admiration, his hat in his hands. The past year had changed him subtly. The wariness in his eyes had been replaced by contentment, though he remained vigilant by nature. "Ready, Mrs. Yates?" he asked, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Zara gathered her teaching materials, returning his smile. Their wedding 3 months ago had been a simple affair, with the whole town in attendance. Brock had purchased land just outside town and started a small horse breeding operation that was already gaining reputation for quality stock. "Always," she replied, taking his arm as they stepped out into the golden afternoon light. As they walked home together, Zara reflected on the strange twist of fate that had brought them together. What had begun as the darkest moment of her life, abandoned in the desert with bandits, had led to her greatest happiness. Sometimes words spoken in haste, "She's my bride," turned out to be the truest ones of all.